welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special. We're at the Nestle headquarters here in Gurgaon, in the National Capital Region, in conversation with the man who's trying to turn things around at the company. Mr. Narayanan, appreciate you joining us once again on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by asking you about where things currently stand on the MAGGI turnaround story. It's back in the market, but you still have uncertainty because the matter continues to be in court.
Sure.
I understand now that perhaps we could be close to the final verdict because the Mysore lab report has been submitted to the Supreme Court. How soon do you believe that that phase of uncertainty is likely to end? Well,
Shereen, I think thank you for being here. And as you know, MAGGI was put back into the market on the 9th of November 2015. I'm happy to report that the feedback has been extremely positive. The consumer uptake has been very strong. And in fact, as you might be aware, we've already reached the leadership position in the category. Of course, it's not as high as we were.
How much market share have you been able to eke out?
Well, we are at about 48% market share as per the last Nielsen reports. And clearly we have now, as I speak to you, sold almost 450 million packs of MAGGI in the market. We are now present in all the states of the country. We have reached almost 2 out of the 3 million outlets that we cover. We are actually now in almost all the towns, about 830 towns that we were before. We are also now there in terms of distribution. But I think at the moment we have only 2 of the variants. We've got the masala and we've got the chicken. And very soon I hope to come out with some of the other variants that were there in the marketplace. As you know, there is a due diligence process that we follow post the Mumbai High Court directions of getting those variants also tested in the accredited laboratories before we put them into the market.
So what kind of broad timeline can we expect as far as launching the variants are concerned?
I would really reckon, Shereen, that probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks you'll start seeing some of the variants coming into the marketplace.
Have they already been sent to the labs for testing and
as I speak to you, the samples are actually with the laboratories and the testing process is on, and I do hope that we will in a relatively short time hear from the laboratories on the results, post which we will come back.
So how many variants are you hoping to launch?
We are looking at least 2 variants to come back into the marketplace, and I think as we move forward there is a fair amount of development work that's also on in terms of new variants. Because I think the whole paradigm has changed, Shereen, and I think what we're trying to really do is to really valorize this category of noodles by also coming up with new taste experiences. And I think that's part of the work that's currently on. So there is feverish activity that is on in the foods group of the company. I think there's a lot of excitement. There's also a sense of quiet achievement with humility at whatever we have achieved so far. And I believe that the kind of support that we've had from the consumers has been overwhelming. So through your channel, I would really like to thank every consumer for being with MAGGI and for being with Nestle.
Let me then ask you what this could finally translate into as far as your financial performance is concerned. Because if I were to look at your Q4 CY15 numbers, it was of course a weak quarter which was anticipated because of what happened with MAGGI. But do you expect that sequentially we can expect a significant pickup on the back of the relaunch of MAGGI, which is now going to be factored in?
Sure. I think, Shereen, on the numbers front, as you are aware, I'm currently in the close period, so I really won't be able to, I'm afraid, share with you details of the kind of numbers that we'd be presenting. However, suffice it to add that yes, indeed, the numbers would be much better than what they were in the previous quarters. I've always said this, Shereen, that I don't have a magic wand. I think we have to build back the trust. We have to build back the market shares. We have to build back the traction, not only into MAGGI but also into the other categories of the company that also have been affected during this period. And I'm happy to state that yes, we are making progress in the other categories as well. And you will see gradually going forward a sequentially improved performance across the portfolio of the organization.
So let me start by asking you to break that up for us across different categories and move away from MAGGI for just a bit, because you are expecting, as you said, an improvement sequentially. You know, our first conversation when you took over, you said that as part of this fight back plan, your endeavor is to get back to double-digit kind of growth rates. As you sit here today, How far into the horizon should we expect that return?
Look, I'm quite confident of the steps that we are taking in the other categories. I think, Shereen, one of the attributes of Nestle has been that we are blessed with fairly strong positions in some of our brands, whether it is brands like Nescafe or Kit Kat, of course, Maggi we've got, or Munch, or any of the other brands of the company. I think we've got a fairly strong position.
Which categories have you specifically seen some improvement? Because you've been facing trouble, for instance, as you've had to take price cuts in your dairy business, the coffee business has been under pressure as well. So where are you seeing that improvement?
Look, I'm seeing, for example, traction in the chocolates and confectionery business very clearly. I'm seeing traction happening in the dairy business. I'm also seeing improvements happening in the coffee and beverage business. As I speak to you, there are in fact clear plans to either relaunch or to come up with new products in some of these categories. I think one of the things we had talked about earlier was the fact that Nestle has a pretty large portfolio of brands and categories, and how can we selectively leverage those opportunities in India that we see today. And I think that's also something that we're working on fairly aggressively, and you will see traction building up. I mean, as I speak to you, anywhere between 20 to 25 projects are on in the company.
Okay.
Looking at new products, restaging, relaunching, getting into new categories. So there is a level of energy and enthusiasm that is getting built up in the organization. All of it, of course, started with the comeback of Maggi.
The trend in the FMCG business now is towards premiumization.
That's right.
Are you trying to say that you're trying to address perhaps the more mass market with the categories that you're either hoping to launch or relaunch?
Look, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do a dual game, which is not just talking about affordability and talking about popularly positioned products, but also to selectively premiumize in the categories in which I see those opportunities. I see those opportunities, for example, in our foods category. I see that opportunity in our coffee category. I see that in our chocolates and confectionery category. So these are categories where we will selectively premiumize. And over the coming 12 to 18 months, you will see launches coming out where we are making those forays. This, together with an increased focus on e-commerce, and that's something that I had mentioned as well. I think a combination of geography, channel and portfolio is really what we'll be playing to in the coming months.
So what is the impact going to be as far as this judicious mix of selective premiumization as well as perhaps volume-led growth, both on the bottom line as well as on the margins?
Look, I think one of the things that we are privileging in the strategy that I have the endorsement of the board of this company is we are privileging growth. So there is going to be a very strong focus on getting the growth engine of the company going.
Even if you have to sacrifice margins?
Now, obviously, growth with sustained profitability is one of the core reasons why businesses continue to flourish. So it's not that it's going to be sacrifice one for the other, but if I were to look at classifying what would be the basis for looking at new opportunities, it would be where I see the size of the price, the growth vector, and the sustainable growth vector improving over a period of time. If that happens, and if I see category level profitabilities which are decent or which are acceptable for me in the short to medium term, we'll be working with that.
Just to understand this, and once again I go back to your previous quarter performance, and I know you're in a closed period, but give us a sense of what we should expect then as far as your EBITDA margins are concerned. Of course, this has been an aberration because of what's happened as far as Maggi is concerned, but do you believe that given the strategy that you intend to roll out, you could expect EBITDA margins in the 20+ sort of range? What should we typically expect?
Look, all I can tell you at this stage, Shereen, is that fundamentally in some of our core categories, we will continue to enjoy the benefits of strong profitabilities, and also we are looking at opportunities of growth in those categories. There are some categories where I believe the levels of investments will be fairly high. As I've mentioned the last time, I think bringing back Maggi and getting back to the leadership position in Maggi is very clearly on my mandate.
So which means more advertising spend?
Which means that I would advertise more, I would look at sharper innovations, I'd look at sharper channel strategies, geography strategies, and therefore greater activation and investment.
So what kind of investments are we then talking about?
Well, you can expect that in some of these categories the levels of investment would be at least 30-40% higher than what we have invested in the past.
So what is the kind of expectation then, or the target that you've set yourself as far as volume growth is concerned? And since you were talking about deeper penetration as well as distribution, what changes can we expect? You talked about e-commerce. You successfully did that as far as the MAGGI relaunch was concerned. What more can we expect on the e-commerce front as well?
You would see us, Shereen, I think, leveraging these opportunities a lot more across our categories. Now, obviously, it was a first for us. When we relaunched MAGGI to come with Snapdeal. As I speak to you, there are active plans on for some of our other categories as well to leverage both the e-commerce opportunities. Now, obviously, when we are
you talking to other players, or will it continue to be a relationship with Snapdeal?
No,
your competitor is talking to Amazon as well, and I mean Patanjali. I don't mean HUL.
Sure. Look, I think there is a plethora of players there, Shereen. Where we try and focus on is really with players, who have got some interest in the domain in which we are talking about, B, who have got an infrastructure that they're capable of investing in and being our partners for an extended period of time, and C, where there is something in it for them and something in it for me as a company.
What about pricing? We've seen what Patanjali has been able to do with disruptive pricing.
Sure.
You've been forced to cut prices in certain categories as well. Do you believe that that will be a casualty? You will be forced to cut prices across different categories to take on competition?
Shireen, firstly, I would really like to clear this misconception. I don't think we are being dictated on price cuts simply because of a player in a market. I think what we are looking at is what is the best value delivery that we can give to the consumer with our portfolio. So pricing is just one of the vectors. Ultimately, it is price value. That's what matters.
But do you believe that you can exercise that pricing power given the competitive landscape and the kind of disruption that we've seen in several of your key categories from the likes of Patanjali?
Sure. I think the issue for us is ultimately the kind of brand value and the kind of utility that it offers consumers. And I believe that if there is a merit in that, we can charge the price for it. But if the consumer doesn't see value, ultimately it is what the consumer's pick of the brand in the basket is. Now, if there is a competitor who is able to do that better than you, then obviously we'll have to take a call. Because ultimately for me, as I told you, growth is a key dimension of the strategy for Nestle. So I'll have to get back to that.
Who's worrying you more today? Are you more worried about what the likes of HUL are doing, or are you more concerned about what Baba Ramdev is doing at Patanjali?
Look,
who's causing more disruption in your life?
To me personally, Shireen, and as a team, I always believe that the paranoid survive. And I think the question for me is not just addressing one competitor. Now, all the competitors that you talked about are veritably strong competitors. Now, I think the question for me is, in a highly competitive environment, what kind of sustainable strategies are going to work for me? So, honestly, it is not any one player that I look to, because I am a multiple category player in the foods and beverages segment, and clearly there are players in each one of them from whom I learn. So I learn a bit from the levers. I learn equivalent from people like Patanjali or from ITC or from any of the other players.
What is the key learnings from Patanjali and at this point in time, because that seems to be the flavor of the season. So what's the key learning from Patanjali?
Look, as I always maintained, Shireen, I respect every competitor. So I look at the inroads being made by competitors as really redefining the landscape in terms of how strong your offering is, how sustainable your offering is, and what is the size of the pie that they're able to do as a consequence of their entry. Each of those entries are obviously in some cases going to take away share, but in some cases they're actually going to expand the size of the pie. So it's going to be a very good kind of battleground for companies to exercise their muscles to get the consumers.
But how challenging is it also going to be for people like you? Because as you take on, and I'm specifically talking about one competitor, because as I said, that Patanjali does seem to be the most aggressive at this point in time, because it's a heady mix of commerce, spirituality, nationality, and they're playing that card.
Sure.
You know, painting the MNC companies versus an Indian homegrown brand. How do you take on that from a strategic perspective?
Look, to me, Shereen, Nestle's history is a 104-year history in India, 150 years globally. We've been in India for 104 years. My employee strength, starting from me down, is entirely Indian. We have 99.7% of our employee strength is Indian. My partners are Indian. My suppliers are Indian. My vendors are Indian. My consumers are Indian. Now, I may have a Swiss nationality in terms of the heritage of the company, but for all practical purposes, I'm very much a part of India. So I honestly...
But do you see this playing out as a disadvantage, at least from a perception point of view?
Look,
and specifically as you try and address growth in the sort of volume market, so to speak?
See, ultimately, I think consumers buy brands. Consumers buy brands, consumers buy propositions, and if that was really the case, a brand like Maggi won't get back to leadership. I mean, if the question was if consumers didn't really love brand Maggi and they attached other attributes to it to make the choice, it won't come back to leadership. So I firmly believe that so long as marketeers and commercial people learn to respect the consumer, the choice of brands, the offerings, and the sustainability of those offerings, I don't think there's any need to worry about other factors that might start influencing the decision making.